Alright, hello everybody and welcome back to another Unreal Editor for Fortnite tutorial. And today we're going to be talking about how to do lighting inside of UEFN. I'm just going to be covering some of the basics that you can do. I'm not going to be covering like some more of the advanced stuff. I'm just going to try and keep this fairly at a beginner level. Next video, I'll probably talk about what's known as a post-process volume, which is another device that you can use to further enhance lighting inside of UEFN. But today I'm kind of just going to show you the basics. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so as you can see, I'm just in the classic template here. And just to showcase the general lights you would generally use, you have these lights right here. So you have a directional light, which is going to indicate a direction in which you want light to point. You have a point light, which is obviously going to point light in a specific direction. A spotlight is more like a big giant light that, you know, kind of like in a movie where like they have a little circle and it like looks like this and it shines a whole bunch of light. That's generally what a spotlight's going to do. A rectangular light or rect light is, the same kind of like a spotlight, but it's a rectangle. And then skylight is light that's essentially sent from the sky. And, I know that sounded pretty straightforward, but that's actually mostly what you would be using to create lighting. So let's just give an example here. Let's come through here and just scale a box here. Just a small little box. Now, something that you have to keep in mind that the Unreal Editor has, Unreal Engine 5 does have this same functionality, but along with that, Unreal Editor for Fortnite also has this functionality, and it's called Lumen. I shouldn't say functionality, it's more of just something that they have built into the engine. But essentially, Lumen is essentially whenever you move around inside of UEFN, the engine is going to try and auto compensate for light that traditionally like wouldn't be there. So like how do I explain this in a better way? Essentially, if I was going to look like down in this corner, right? And let me block it off. That's why I'm building this box here. But if I was going to block myself off in a very dark corner of the map, what Lumen's going to do is essentially it's going to illuminate that area even though I shouldn't see anything. Even though it should be completely dark and I shouldn't be able to see inside, Lumen will illuminate that area so I have enough light to see. Right, so right now is a good example, right? As you can see, I really shouldn't be able to see inside of this volume here because it's completely blocked off from any of the lighting, yet I'm still able to look inside this box and have it be illuminated, right? And Lumen is also the technology that makes lighting a lot easier inside of Unreal Engine 5 as opposed to other game development environments that use a lot of ray tracing. So just to be aware of that. But why don't we go ahead and look here at some examples of some lights here. So first let's go ahead and look at a point light. As I said before, a point light simply is going to point light in a specific direction. Nothing too crazy. So here is my point light. You can already see some of the reflections that it's having on the wall here. If I move this up and down, you can see this little reflection here is changing. But let's go ahead and change the color here to a red, and as you can see it points lights. I can change the intensity of that lighting in the box here. I can change how the light is created here, the source radius, a whole bunch of settings here that you can manipulate and use to change how this light works. You can choose whether it casts a shadow, and yeah, that's your point light. We also have, as I said before, spotlights. So spotlight, again, going to be very similar, but as you can see here, it points a circular cylindrical light radius, right? And I can come here and I can scale how much that's going to point and whatnot. So I can point this at the roof here, and as you can see, it's pointing light in that general direction. And of course, I can give a radius and a strength here. I can give an inner cone and an outer cone angle and kind of manipulate how that's given. I can change the source radius. Very similar settings here, but as you can see, it's shining rather than a point light, which just points in a specific direction. The spotlight is going to base it more or less like a cylinder or a cone, where essentially you have an inner and an outer radius, and then it shines light within that radius. So there is your spotlight. Cool. You also have a rectangular light, which, as you guessed, does it the exact same thing as a spotlight, but now it's a rectangle versus more of a cylindrical cone. Right, so now this is pointing light directly up, and then of course I can change the coloring of things just like before, change the intensity, and all of that good stuff. Here's your rectangular light. Okay, now the other two that were in that list there were a directional light, which just simply, as you could guess, points light in a direction. So, but this is more used for general lighting. So you would use this really for like general lighting, just in general, right? So this could point now that red direction, but notice how it applies across the map, right? This is one of the big differences between a directional light and just a point light, for example, is a directional light affects the whole scene here. And if I rotate this, you can see it rotates the directional light. Like this light is literally shining everywhere on the map right now, right? And it doesn't matter where I move this, it's essentially pointing all rays across the entire map. And then when I rotate it, it changes the direction of that light. So now if I move this up, this is still receiving light, but these guys down here are not. So this is what a directional light does. Exactly the same as Unreal Engine 5, for those of you who are from there. And of course you have an intensity, right, that you can change here as well. And it does manipulate your sky scene. Okay, so there's your directional light, very similar to what like a point light would do, but it's a light that kind of affects the whole scene. And then last but not least is going to be your skylight. This is going to affect the color of the sky. Crazy, I know. Us crazy software developers name things weird names, like skylight definitely wouldn't. I'm making a joke. Of course, skylight's going to affect the sky, right? And then you can change the light color and all that kind of stuff. You can see whether it casts a shadow or not. You can also add in your very own cube map, which is very nice. So like if you had like a very customized like sky you wanted to use, this is where you would implement it. You would implement it right here, and then you would add that cube map here. So if you had a very customized sky that you wanted to use, it would be added here. Whole lot of stuff you can change here as far as the settings go, the amount of RGB, and that's essentially going to be your skylights. This is going to change how the sky looks, and voila, there you go. All right, so those are the basic things to use for lighting. Now, when it comes to this, you generally don't only want to just use those. You also have the ability, again, to kind of change some of the settings here and the time here. So if you wanted to use this to change like the time of day, you could use that. And then there are also some settings here in the island settings that allow you to manipulate the sky here if you wanted to as well. But generally, I would not recommend you use these settings here. You can if you want to, but this is generally where I wouldn't do it. And as you can see, it's not really changing too much in my scene anyways. What I would recommend is after you kind of set up your initial lighting using either a spotlight, a point light, a directional light, or a skylight, or a rec light or a rectangular light, is you would then want to use the day and night device. The day sequence device. Yes, here it is. So this device here is actually really good. This is generally my next step when I want to do lighting inside of UEFN. It kind of has all the properties that I need to do lighting in it, and it's a really good device to use. So the first thing is obviously you can set a day and night cycle here. So you can have it start at a random time, start at a fixed time, start at a specific time. You can set that time here, what time you want it to be, or if it's just a default, and then the priority it has, as well as some fade speeds. Next is a trigger volume. So what does this mean? Essentially, this means that you have, let's say I set the day and night cycle to be midnight, right? So I've set this to a trigger volume, which means that it's only going to affect me when I'm inside this volume. So let's say this is the box, and you can obviously set the extents of the box here if you wanted to. But essentially, it's daytime, it's daytime, it's daytime. I come into here, and it's nighttime, because now I've made this a trigger volume, so it only triggers when I'm inside of it. Right, so that's what this trigger volume setting does. If I turn this off, then it affects everywhere. Essentially, it's very similar to what a post-process balance volume would do with the limitless extents, right? It's kind of similar to that, where if you have limitless extent check marked on, it affects the whole map, and if you don't have it checked on, it only affects that portion, right? This is the same thing, where if I check this, it's only going to affect you if you are inside the box. All right, so that's that. The next one here is going to be the sunlight. So if I check mark here sunlight, that's obviously going to change the lighting coming down from the sky here. I can, of course, then change the intensity of that light. I can change the color as well. If I wanted like more of a red look, I could change the look here to red, and it would give me kind of that same look here. I could rotate it, of course, all that kind of stuff. I can also add some fog, so if I wanted to add some fog to my level as well, this is where I do it, and of course I would change the color, the fall off, and all of that good stuff here as well. Opacity. Opacity means how see-through it is, right? And then of course checking marking the boxes here to unenables this stuff. So if you didn't like it, you can enable it there. You also have the ability to change the skylight here, right? Or light coming from the sky, right? Again, these pretty much mean what they mean. And then the sky here, the actual sky and how it looks, all the gradient blend and all of that kind of stuff is going to be here. And of course you can manipulate this stuff around and create some really, really cool stuff. You can also set the size of the sun and its intensity on the world, right? But essentially this is really where you can do a lot of that customization of the sky. And then last, you also have the ability to change the clouds. So if I wanted green clouds, for example, I could do that. And then add some green light color coming from the clouds. And there you have it. So again, that's just going to be it for this video. I didn't want to get too in-depth into all the things you can do with lighting. Next episode, we'll probably look at what's known as a post-process volume. But this is, again, just a general overview of all the things that you can do inside of UEFN when it comes to the lighting. So if you had any questions on this video, please leave them in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.